Welcome, everyone, to our NCAA social series. This is episode 44. I'm your host, Andy Katz. Pleased to be joined by Brandon Martin, the athletic director at UMKC, Carla Williams, the athletic director at the University of Virginia, and Allen Greene, the athletic director at Auburn University. It is Black History Month, but more than that, I think it's most important to celebrate the Black Athletic Director Alliance, which has now been formed. Which it doesn't matter what month it is. This should be celebrated at all times because we need more of this. We need more alliances to increase diversity hiring across the board in college athletics. I want to just first go around and let's go to the infancy, the beginning and the impetus for this organization and its goals. So let's start first with Brandon. We'll just literally go around our group here about why and how you think it was formed.
Sure. I think it's a great question, Andy. And I think just credit to Allen. This was the genesis started with him wanting to get a collective group of athletic administrators to talk about things happening on campus, whether it be related to social justice, whether it be related to different challenges related to leadership. And that sort of evolved into some additional things that we felt that we needed to attack and approach collectively. And so over the course of 2 to 3 months, it was decided amongst the group that we would form the Black AD Alliance. And it's been refreshing. It's been something that has been good for me as a professional to meet people like Carla and learn more about her journey and some of the aims and goals that she wants to accomplish with the Black AD Alliance. From a structure standpoint, we do have an executive committee that's comprised of 16 senior level ADs at the D1 level. And we also have subcommittees. We have subcommittees that are aimed at student athlete development. Of course, we have a pipeline subcommittee. We also have an ambassador subcommittee where we have great folks involved in that, like Gene Smith, Peter Roby, and Earl Edwards and others, McKinley Boston. And so we have subcommittees that are organized and structured, geared to really attack this this issue that we have with the scarce amount of Black senior level administrators that we have at the Division I level.
Carla?
No, I agree with Brandon. You know, Allen reached out to me and said, and I think timing is important in many aspects, because this was, you know, on the heels of George Floyd's murder. And Allen reached out and just said, hey, we'd like to get a group together to just talk and share information and be sounding boards. And as Brandon mentioned, it's evolved since then, but the origins was simply a way for us to have an outlet to talk about what we were feeling, what we were dealing with on our campuses, and working with our student athletes and with our coaches and our staff and so forth in regards to what was happening in our country. And then I think once we came together and started to talk and realize, you know, there is a lot that we could do to help. Let's just not talk about it. Let's figure out what we can do to be a part of positive change. And so that's what's been so inspirational and refreshing for me, is to be a part of change and trying to make this industry more representative of our student athletes and our communities.
Yeah, Andy, you know, number one, thanks for having us on. This is, I think, not only timely, as Carla mentioned, but it's really important work, as Brandon has mentioned. And you know, the impetus was needing some people who were going through what I was going through, feeling lost on how to manage and running an athletic department with coaches and student athletes and fan bases, managing my own personal challenges with the social injustice and the emotional feelings. And so, to Carla's point, like just the fact that we could come together, several months after kind of COVID impacted our world and see people who look like us, who were leaders in the industry. And I will tell you, it's humbling to engage with such dynamic and intelligent people. I've learned so much by just listening to our colleagues. And even though he went to Southern Cal, he's relatively intelligent. And so I've been able to learn from him an awful lot. And it's been fun to watch our group come together, our group evolve, just to better represent the student athletes who we serve each and every day.
So look, I'm going to ping pong back to you, Allen, that a familiar refrain I heard from coaches, white coaches, post George Floyd, was they might have been hearing their players during potential past incidents when they were, racially profiled, you name it, but they weren't listening. And that was a key thing. I mean, I cannot tell you how many coaches I talked to over the summer where they had these raw Zoom conversations with their players, predominantly Black players. And they'd be like, I didn't realize that you went through that after you left the gym and literally got in your car. And even though you're a high profile athlete at this university, you were profiled, which is crazy because these conversations weren't had. So to that point, how critical has it been? And the numbers are growing, and hopefully they will continue to do so, to have administrators, those in charge, athletic directors, who can not only hear, listen, and probably have experienced some of the same profiling and racial injustice that their athletes have gone through. And now you can actually have these conversations as a person of authority, and you've actually gone through similar situations in your lifetimes. How has that helped in the relationship with the student athletes, from the administrator, the top administrator, down to the student athletes? And I want to go right back around and start with you, Allen.
Yeah, Andy, that's an excellent point. And I think that's why our group felt the need to be more organized, so that we can better serve, our university presidents, our coaches, our student athletes, regardless of race, regardless of gender. You had made a statement. I got a lot of calls from my white colleagues wondering, what do I say? What do I do? Can we talk about this? And I said, Brandon and Carla, myself and our peers, this is the life that we live every day. So when it comes to engaging with student athletes, we have literally been in their shoes, right? We still are in their shoes. There isn't a day that goes by, even this morning, driving to work, right? There's a police officer that pulls up next to me. It's hard to put into words what goes through your mind. Even though, listen, I know I've done nothing wrong. I know I'm going the speed limit, but in the back of my mind, because I've had these experiences before where police have harassed me for being Black, when a young student athlete says that has happened to them or their family members, I believe them because I know it's true. It's happened to me and it continues to happen. What I think people need to have a better understanding of is, just because someone has a certain position in life, we can't scrub away our Blackness, right? We can change our hair, we can change our clothes, can change the way we talk, can change the way we walk. But at the end of the day, we're still Black men and women who are walking and driving the streets of America. And if you haven't had that experience before, you truly don't know. And you wouldn't have had the conversation because you wouldn't have been aware. And so what this summer has allowed us to do is have these uncomfortable conversations, these needed conversations, so that we can have a better understanding of what it's like to be Black in America. And I've grown a lot by understanding what it's like to be white in America and not have to worry about your skin color when walking into a store or when driving down the street. So Andy, you phrased the question in a way that I don't know that I could, but it is incredibly poignant, and the conversation needs to continue to be had.
And I'll piggyback on Alan. This experience with the Alliance has allowed us to amplify and magnify the importance of diversity and the value of diversity, and that's true across any industry. It's not just in college athletics, but it's true in any industry in our country. Diversity is a strength. It is not a weakness. It is not a negative. It is a strength, and it makes us all better leaders. And so because we've focused on the importance of diversity and the value of diversity, I have become a better leader. Leader for our student athletes, for our coaches, for our staff, for our university community, for our greater community here in Charlottesville. And so, diverse staffs, diverse leadership is a strength, and it is not something that you should try to have to figure out. It should just be. And so I think I'm really encouraged that we are at least having a conversation about the value of having diverse leadership, especially in our industry when we are leading a diverse group of student athletes.
Yeah, I'll just dovetail off of what Carla and Allen mentioned. I think you did mention coaches, early on in your question. And I think this has been sort of a growth opportunity for a lot of our coaches. Our coaches seem to be, not all, but a large majority, they're focused on wins. And that's coming from top down from all three athletic directors on this call. But I think it's really forced them for some growth opportunities to truly understand the plight and the reality of the Black student athletes that they have on their respective teams, to truly understand that. And also when they talk about leadership, they have to lead in a different way, and it has to be authentic, and it has to be sincere, and it has to be something that builds trust with the student athletes, especially as they exit the respective institution that they're competing at. And so just to circle back on some of Carla's comments, I think this is a great opportunity where I think all three of us as athletics directors have had to stretch a little bit in terms of how we communicate in this period, how we deal with our coaches, and how we set select mandates of non-negotiables as it relates to Black student athletes and their do's and don'ts, and how we monitor and track that.
So I want to go to a topic that I think is uncomfortable. And that is, while I think there's been great diversity, obviously, in the student athlete population, it's getting much better in college athletics, as this alliance is showing. Where it's lacking is above you, and to some degree, to the left and right, which is the donor class and the presidential level. We're still climbing up here, but I'm curious for each one of you here, and maybe how this alliance can help, problem solving, when I know this is true, where I've got to believe more times, 9 times out of 10, if you're meeting with donors, most of the time, probably you're the only person of color. And, you've got to cross that bridge, and dealing with those conversations, and how within this alliance, you can help each other out of navigating that world, which, has been for decades, and hopefully it's changing, but it has been predominantly white. Alan, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Andy. It is an excellent point. I don't know, at least for me, it's not as uncomfortable as it may seem. So I've spent a lot of years in the fundraising world, and my first kind of in the field fundraising job was at Ole Miss. And so, I tell people, imagine, right, this Black guy from Seattle. I'm a Yankee, if you will. Never lived in the South, and I'm in Oxford, Mississippi, right? And now I'm in Alabama. So two places that are considered the Deep South. I had family members who were really concerned for my safety, right, when I went down to Ole Miss about 7 or 8 years ago. And the stories that I would tell them and the interactions that I had with donors, each time I would have these positive experiences. I loved my time in Oxford, Mississippi. And if it wasn't for that time with those donors and those supporters, I wouldn't have felt comfortable coming to Auburn. And so, yes, look, there are people who share values that are outside the norm all over the country, right? You can have bad experiences no matter where you go. Being in a position of leadership as a person of color, it has allowed at least me to have very transparent conversations with our donors. And I actually had one yesterday with one of our key donors, and it's a conversation that began this summer. And it's a conversation that we would not have had if it wasn't for the horrific events of this summer and the events that built up to it. So I think we all have to take advantage of the opportunity that we have in front of us. And although conversations may be uncomfortable, they're very much needed. And I think as we get more as we have more of these conversations, I think they become more comfortable. And it's allowed me to see the hearts of the people who we rely on to support our student athletes in our department. And also it's allowed me to say, look, you may not understand that our student athletes, whether they're Black or white or whomever, may support Black Lives Matter. You and your circles may feel like that organization, and here's what I hear, right? It's a Marxist organization. They are about violence. There's lots of different angles to bring. And what I try to explain to our fan base and our donor base is, look, you haven't walked in the shoes of a person who is celebrated on the field in courts of play, but when they go out to the parking lot, they're just another person of color. They're just another Black man or Black woman. The life experience is very different, not just those couple of hours under the lights. And I think when we all pause and just listen to other folks, we may still not agree, but we at least have a better understanding of someone's perspective. So we've tried here to use it to our advantage.
And I'll just add that, to me, it's a great question, Andy, and we work through those challenges daily. But I think it also speaks to the value of diversity, because Brandon, Allen, and I can thrive in any environment. That's valuable. And our peers in the Alliance can do the same, can thrive in any environment. And to me, that is a valuable asset. And so when you think about donors and presidents and chancellors, it doesn't matter what they look like. We have been able to thrive in that environment. And our president here, Jim Ryan, will tell you, some people will say, well, you had courage to hire Carla. And he'll say, no, I didn't have courage. I just hired the best person for the job. But it actually, sadly, does take courage. I mean, that's the point where we are in our country, that it does take courage, even though we are well qualified. Race still plays a factor. And so the presidents and chancellors who do make the decision to set aside any bias, any discrimination, any stereotypes to hire the best candidate for the job is a wonderful thing. And we need more of that from our presidents and chancellors.
Yeah. And I'll just say that even though, I do have Power 5 experience, not as an athletic director, I don't have the same type of pressures that both Carla and Allen have in terms of how they relate to their donors. But what I can say is that, I've used this opportunity to use a crisis as a chance for us to educate and to take the scoreboard where all of our donors are concerned about wins and losses, and really take that to another level to where they have a true connection with our student athletes, and they have an understanding about who is that starting point guard on our men's basketball team. We don't have football, but to really bridge that gap. And, I think it's been really refreshing to bridge some of our Black student athletes with some of our donors. And so I've taken that approach, as we move forward. I'm really fortunate to be in Kansas City, where it's a passionate sports town. Clearly, our football team is in the Super Bowl this week. Chiefs, that's awesome. And so that enthusiasm, even though we don't have football, I have to try and dovetail off of that type of enthusiasm as I'm trying to spread the word about Kansas City athletics. And so instead of taking it from a deficit standpoint, Andy, I've kind of looked at it from a growth mindset standpoint and really look for opportunities to educate our donors and connect them with our student athletes as we move forward.
So Carla, there has been over the last, 20, 30 years, so many exceptional Black student athletes, female, in the pipeline, but very few have continued to climb up the administrative level. And so, it's unfortunate that you are a trailblazer because you shouldn't need to be one, but what has stopped, what's been that ceiling to prevent Black female student athletes to continuing the kind of path that you have gone through to climb that ladder, shatter that ceiling, and to get into positions of power that are deserved like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's many decades. But once again, it goes back to who's doing the hiring, and of course at the AD level, that's presidents and chancellors. And then if you're thinking about entry-level positions in athletic administration or mid-level management positions in athletic administration, those are associate ADs, deputy ADs, and athletic directors. And so that has been really frustrating, that I was the first Black female AD at this level in 2017. And I enrolled at the University of Georgia in 1985. And not until 2017 did a Black female have the opportunity to manage a major athletic department. And it's not because the talent isn't there. It is not because the competencies aren't there. It's the opportunity. And so we've got to continue to develop our skills, build our networks. But those who are in hiring positions have to lay aside stereotypes and fears about race, and simply do what is right. And that is to hire the best possible candidate, regardless of their gender or their race. And so once that happens, then you'll start to see a lot more competent men and women of color succeed in this business. I became an AD in 2017. That doesn't mean that I became qualified in 2017. I was qualified a long time ago, but never got the opportunity. But you just have to keep at it and stay encouraged and keep encouraging others to stay with it as well.
Hey, Andy, if I can interject here.
Yeah,
Carla's a rock star. I mean, and I don't throw that term around lightly at all. I have such a tremendous amount of respect for her. She is a brilliant person. Candace Story Lee in our conference is a brilliant person. And these are two women, and there are others, right, who are in our alliance who, as I've had a chance to get to know and hear from and learn from, to her point, to Carla's point, she was ready a long time ago. And there are a number of different women in our industry, Black or otherwise, who are ready to be athletic directors. And any university, any athletic department, any student athlete, any coach would be over the moon excited to have some of these folks lead their departments. So it needs to be underscored, to Carla's point, that just because someone ascends to the AD in this leadership position, that doesn't make them all of a sudden ready. They're ready beforehand, and we all collectively need to do a much better job of highlighting, promoting, and helping females get access to these positions.
So first of all, I hope that we're doing that in this series, and we've had, secondary level, I guess, or, assistant athletic directors or assistant commissioners, through this program, and others, people of color, men and women. And I'm hoping we continue to do that, to highlight, to give them that opportunity, because I'm going to be real here. As in my former life, when I was, print journalist, and then, worked my way up and covering searches, whether they're coaches and ADs, I would hear from the coaching search, committees and these firms, we got to have a Black candidate, a Black candidate, just because we have to. And these are things, they weren't said in the public space, but they certainly were being said. And yet that's not representative of that athletic department, not representative of maybe that city, of that campus, certainly, to have one person of color interview for this particular job. So how do you get it to the firms, that these search firms that everyone uses, for better or for worse, to diversify their thinking, and hopefully it is changing in the last year, for hiring at your level and below? And, we'll go back the other way, and we'll start with you, Brandon.
Yeah, sure. I think it's first to sort of provide some context around this of, there's an overrepresentation of Black student athletes at the Division I level versus there's an underrepresentation of senior level administrators. I think that's important to single out.
Well, that's a fact.
That's a fact. But I think it's important that when we think about the Black AD Alliance, it's important that we continue to work with conference commissioners. It's important that we continue to work with the senior NC2A administration. It's important that we continue to build out our pipeline so that those individuals are known and have an opportunity. So that would be my take on it.
Carla?
Yeah, I'll just add, the search firms, good and bad, and so just like everything, I think it's a part of the process that we need to become better connected. But also there are challenges there, because the mindset is very similar to the overall mindset. And to give you an example, and Brandon and Allen have heard this before, I won't disclose which search firm, but I called the head of a search firm when the Virginia job was open and inquired about it. And I said, that'd be perfect for me. I'd love that job. And the head of the search firm told me, don't try, that you'll never get it. There is a line out the door of sitting athletic directors who've been waiting for that job. You should try for something else, but not that one. And I immediately got off the phone and started working to get this job. So it's good and bad, because it's a necessary part of the industry. But I still think, we've got to cover all of our bases. And so that includes the conference offices, the national organizations, search firms, and in my opinion, most importantly, presidents and chancellors, because they are the ones hiring athletic directors. And we can clear all of the hurdles leading up to the president and chancellor. But if they don't exercise the leadership to hire the best candidate, we're going to remain in this position. And so I think we have to do all of it. And that's why the alliance is so important, that we try to cover so many bases. And I have to commend Brandon and Allen, because all of us have day jobs, but they have devoted so much of their time, talent, and effort to this alliance for the greater good. And so we just have to continue that, because it's almost like we have to do everything. We have to cover every base to get a fair shot once we get to the presidents and chancellors.
Yeah, very well stated from both Brandon and from Carla. Let me try to phrase it in a little bit of a different way. Is policy is on paper, right? And what we're trying to raise the level of conscience of is culture. And so whether it's Rooney Rule 2.0, Rooney Rule for college, you can't force people to find value in diversity, right? You have to show them. You have to demonstrate that having diverse people around you with experiences and thoughts, that makes you better. That makes the organization better. So it's really important for industry leaders to understand that you are a better president of a university, of an organization, of a whatever. As the ultimate CEO, your organization is going to be better if you have people who represent different pockets, who can bring different perspectives to the table to make better decisions and to better serve your constituents. Culture is where we are working to drive, and that's really important to be able to try to move a needle. And ultimately, what we do in our industry is serve 18 to 22-year-olds, right? We do it through coaches, we do it through nutritionists, through strength and conditioning, through academic services. We are ultimately responsible for preparing leaders for tomorrow. And if there's a lack of diversity in an approach to how to problem solve, then you're not going to be as good at solving problems. Thus, you're not going to be as good at your job. And that's the cultural illumination that we're trying to provide.
So this summer, it has definitely felt like, or it did feel like, and there's no question we have the facts to back it up, that student athletes were empowered to speak out and did so without any kind of repercussions. Their coaches finally awoke to, the idea that, this is a good thing. No one should be kept quiet if they feel passionate about an injustice. But at the athletic director level, as we've just stated, you have other constituents that you have to deal with, and hopefully they were okay with it, but they may not have been. So I'm curious how you bridged that gap between your student athletes who felt, look, this is my time to speak out and I should have that right. Whether that's verbally, whether it's through action, whether that's through a t-shirt, something on the floor, something on the jersey, how you balanced all of that. And Carla, obviously, Charlottesville, has a whole different element to that because of everything that went on in Charlottesville. So I'll start with you. How did you balance that with your student athletes, the need to express themselves and empowering them to do so, while also trying to manage to make sure, if you even felt there needed to be any guardrails?
Yes, it's a great topic, and we could spend hours on it. I will say that Charlottesville probably felt like it added an additional layer to the complexity of all of this. But I think our student athletes, our coaches, our staff members of color, much like me, I mean, what happened in Charlottesville happened in August, and I arrived in October. And I did have colleagues to say, "Are you sure you want to go there?" But Allen talked about being in Oxford and working now in Auburn. I grew up 30 minutes from Auburn, Alabama, in a small town in Georgia. So all of my life, my adult life, has been in the Deep South. And you learn how to figure out how to thrive despite the hurdles. You just figure it out. And so our student athletes come from all over the world, certainly all over the country, and they have exhibited great leadership, great thought. They aren't just doing this to check a box. They are doing it because they are passionate about it. That they actually do fear for their lives. That is actually why they are doing what they are doing, because they actually are afraid that they will be a statistic. And so that makes it a lot easier for us to communicate with our donors. And of course, just like for all of us, there are donors who understand and are empathetic, and there are supporters, alums who are not. And so what we do is we try to do our best to communicate, to over communicate, to share information, to share the student athlete's viewpoint, to share my viewpoint, which has been quite valuable, because my perspective is a perspective they don't ever hear about. And so that's been quite helpful for us in bridging the gap.
Brandon?
Yeah, I think, we're certainly in a different era, in a certain period of activism as it relates to our student athletes. If you look at, the days prior, when we had people like, Harry Edwards, and we had, others during civil rights, that was a different day, and most of our student athletes don't even, unfortunately, don't have knowledge of people like that. But, I think that we have student athletes who are afraid. We have student athletes who are confused about how to move forward. One of the things that I've strongly encouraged my student athletes to do is to really clarify your purpose on what is it that you're trying to get done. What is it that you're trying to communicate? The other one is to get organized and find out who are going to be some of the persons or spokespeople who can really come forward and talk to myself as the AD, and talk to some of the senior level administration at UMKC about the concerns. I think it would be a mistake to try and silence their voices during this time. I don't think that's important. But I do think that it has to be constructive, and it does have to come with some sort of aims and some goals about how to move forward. So we want to take the emotion. We understand that they're emotional, but I think that there has to be a plan in place, and that plan in place has to be a lot larger than just themselves. And so when we talk about the legacy, and we talk about all of the leaders, years ago, it was a mission and goals beyond themselves. And so with this generation, that's something that I've taken upon myself as the AD to really teach them about the legacy. What legacy are you really trying to leave as a student athlete versus just being so solely focused on this moment?
Good comments. Again, I think the great part about having three people on here is that we get to bring different things. So what Brandon and Carla said, completely agree with. Let me try to bring a different angle to it. So Carla had mentioned, the word complex or complexities, and that's definitely true, right? We have 550 student athletes at Auburn, and we are here to serve all of them. Something I didn't think about, two things in having conversations with our student athletes. Our white student athletes, some of them feeling paralyzed, wanting to help, but not knowing what to do, and the weight of that uncertainty on what path to move forward. And then talking to our international student athletes who wonder, kind of like when a dog hears a noise and they turn their head, our international student athletes are like, what's wrong with America? Not the America that I thought from abroad. And again, the beauty of having conversations is it provides an opportunity for one to say, never would have thought of that. And that's why I appreciate being able to have these conversations. Our student athletes put together a diversity group, and they wanted to do something that was impactful. And so we designed a Unity t-shirt, and we sold that Unity t-shirt, and proceeds went to the institution to help raise money for need-based scholarships for underrepresented populations, if you will. And that gave them an opportunity to share their voice, to do something that was meaningful and impactful, and something that our donors could get behind. And the amount of positive feedback that we received, the amount of donations that we received from not only people in our department, but from our donors supporting that cause, really left me with a warm heart. And so trying to find some commonalities, to Brandon's point, on how we can think bigger than just ourselves in this moment and what we can do to actually have an impact, I think resonates with so many more people, as opposed to, here I am, here's my issue, hear me. Making it more about the broader scope has been really helpful in our world.
Before I get to your final comments, just quick sidebar. It drove me crazy, and it seems like every week I've got my little soapbox moment, but the voting initiative, which should not have been political, but it was politicized at times, assuming that, schools going through a voting push meant you were specifically voting for one party over the other. And maybe they were based on their age, but maybe they weren't. But voting should be something that all young people do, regardless of who you're going to vote for. And that was just a little sidebar, but it was something I think everyone could have gotten behind and did, to have student athletes get engaged in the political process if they wanted to do so, and actually affect the change that they wanted to, going back to Brandon's point of having a purpose. And voting obviously starts with that. All right, so let's wrap this up this way. A year from now, 2 years from now, whatever the timeline is, we'll once again I want just a quick comment from everyone here. What would be where you could say, for the Black AD Alliance, we've had success, or we've accomplished our goals. What are some benchmarks in any way, shape, or form? And maybe they don't have to be tangibly, that you think we could say a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, that have been, that you hope to have been accomplished. And Brandon, we'll start with you, and we'll just go around our little Zoom room here.
Yeah, well, Andy, I'll just start with the overall awareness and the overall urgency for a lot of the things that we've talked about previously, Andy. I think if we can make meaningful touches with the senior level administration at the NCAA and conference commissioners, as we alluded to previously. But not only that, if we can some meaningful conversations with chancellors and presidents, and have real conversations, not just conversations where they get a resume or they get other pertinent information, and then they're expected to make a decision about who they want their next director of athletics to be. That would be one. I think number two, I think if we can create even a larger pipeline, that would involve even going all the way down to some of our current student athletes who see myself, they see Carla, they see Allen on a daily basis, and maybe they don't quite understand what we do, but when we show up pre-COVID and like we are today, and they say, well, wow, you know what? That's something that I'm curious about. Maybe that's something that I can do. I think if we can get more student athletes involved and interested in our industry, I think that would be great. The other piece is that I think there has to be some synergies between a lot of our goals. So there's no secret that Lead One has efforts. They've just produced a white paper. MOA, they have their aims and goals of what they want to get accomplished. I think at some point there's going to have to be some synergy, some collaboration, and some unity amongst groups to where we can all come together and reach some of the outcomes that we want. And so those are the three things that I think are pertinent at this time.
And I'll just add quickly, I would be happy next year, 2 years, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if presidents and chancellors would set aside any fear, would look at us, look at me, look at Brandon, look at Allen, look at our peers, our colleagues, and set aside any fear about race and gender and whether or not we can do the job. We are doing the job. We need opportunities. And so my hope is that you'll see many more people of color, women, leading departments, leading athletic departments, because we are the best candidate for the job. That is my hope, that presidents and chancellors will take a leadership role in making that happen.
So I'll close out by thinking kind of high level here. And most of us who sit in this chair, regardless of gender, regardless of race, are servant leaders. We want what's best for others. We use a saying in our department, and it's a John Wooden saying, but care more about the success of others than your own. And in time, as we care more about the success of others, right? Our student athletes, our coaches, our staff members, our mentees, our mentors, our colleagues at the university level, senior leadership level, our presidents and our chancellors, our boards. If we can work to help put them in better positions to be successful, I think we will have a more diverse workforce. We'll have more opportunities for our student athletes to get into this industry so that they can give back. We'll have greater diversity in the coaching ranks. We'll have more opportunities. There's a reason why, as I think about being a young Black kid growing up, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. There were Major League Baseball players who were Black who I looked up to. And so as we see in society today, we see that the Black folks in our communities typically are athletes or entertainers of some sort. You don't see many lawyers, doctors, or at least those people don't get highlighted. And so if we can have more men, more Black men, Black women, women in general, more people of color, people of different diverse backgrounds, more underrepresented populations, maybe there's a little boy or girl out there who says, Mommy, Daddy, I want to be like that person, right? I want to be like Brandon. I want to be like Carla, and help put them on this journey of a rewarding profession that is achievable and attainable. But to Carla's point, and Brandon made this point as well, is it's a collective effort. And if we all take pride in caring about the success of others more than our own, then we will have some of these tangible outcomes that I think most people desire to have. But more importantly, it just makes for a better industry.
Well, I will tell you, I hate to say there's been any positives in the pandemic, but having the Black AD Alliance sort of formed during this unprecedented year is certainly going to be, I think, something that will have a long-term positive effect on college athletics, regardless of division. I appreciate the three of you taking the time with us today. This has been wonderful, educational, and informational, and I hope inspiring, as you said, Alan, to others, as Carla is the ultimate trailblazer, and both of you are doing, all three of you are doing wonderful work at your respective institutions, and I'm sure more to come. So Brandon Martin from UMKC, Carla Williams from Virginia, Allen Greene from Auburn, appreciate your time. As always, you can go to ncaa.org/social series, where we have all our social series archived. I'm Andy Katz. Stay safe, everyone.